Well, personally, I have never had a significant experience with crime, but I have an experience that I do not realize because of my age. When I was a child, about 10 years old, the president at that time was Felipe Calderon. According to the news, he started the war against the narco. Due to my age, I never understood what really happened, but my parents no longer let me go out to play as before. They simply refused to let me go out with any explanation. I never saw the news or read the newspaper because at the time I didn't understand it. I only saw the photos, and well, it turns out that there was a time when the people were hanged, murdered, kidnapped daily. I never noticed it, since for me the world wall was my humble neighborhood called El Fonapo. As at that time, internet access was scarce. To have fun, I went out to play with my friends, but since I couldn't because of the situation, my parents bought me a Nintendo Wii. I only had one game, and since we didn't have a lot of money, I played that same game over and over until I was fed up. The game was Super Mario Bros. Wii. Returning to the topic of crime, I remember that once they entered to the kindergarten that was next to elementary school and vandalized a classroom, broke windows, stolen school supplies, even popped in the classroom. It was news that gave that talk for a while. Graffiti also began to become fashionable. These thugs began to scratch everything they could on doors, glass windows, walls, but especially the mechanical games in the park. There was a triple slide that was always dirty, plus the swings were always damaged. I also remember that there were many criminals near my old house. I think that boy was called Arturo. He didn't go to school, he was always outside his house. He was a thief. He wasn't able to enter any of the shops in the neighborhood because he almost always tried to steal something. He had a brother who was older, but he was the same. In addition, I remember that in that store, a woman who, whenever she gave me the change badly, that is, she stole money from me, and when her husband attended me, he sometimes charged me the double. I used to have good memories of that neighborhood, but now that I think about it, it turns out it was rubbish. My parents always told me that this is a bad place to live, but I didn't believe them because my old friends lived there. I don't know what motivated people to act that way or if they needed to do those things, but I think that if it was better to live there. After that, we moved to another quieter neighborhood. It also had a square that, for it, is true that it's one of the most beautiful in the city. In the store I went to, they never stole money from me, and there were no criminals that I know there were now. After the ha- After this house, we moved to about 5 blocks near some farmland. We only had two neighbors, and to this day, no one has bothered us. I think it's better to live near the countryside. Warning: in this part, the video becomes some dark. Continuing with the crime theme, I asked my brother what had happened during that time because he was then 20 years old and more aware of what was happening. He told me some things that happened. First of all, drug trafficking increased a lot. There were many murders at the houses of the narcos. They were shooting at phone grenades. Among other things, they began to ask for a quota from the city's businesses. The quota is to extort money from businessmen to pay a certain amount of money, and if they didn't pay that money, the narcos will kill the businessman or a member of his family. I remember in a transport business with many thugs, they shoot and threw grenades, practically leaving that business in ruins, and to this day it hasn't been recovered. At that time, my brother lived in Chihuahua capital, and he told me that the kidnappings and shootings were more common in the streets. That insecurity was very unleashed. He also told me that a nearby city called Miyoki had a curfew due to vandalism. Personally, I don't remember the situation being so bad back then, but it's because I was very young. But I think it's better to know the truth even if it's horrible.